There was an article that came out on Pro Football Talk by Mike Florio, and we got to talk about it. Because he's talking about Nick Saban, and he's talking about Nick Saban in relation to recruiting and NIL. And the summary of the article, you can go read it for yourself, but the summary is that Nick Saban is against NIL because it is going to hurt him in recruiting, or it's going to make recruiting harder for him in the long run. Now, really quickly, get in the comments. Let me know what you think about this. Nick, Brake, and I actually just got into it before we got on air here, so I know that there is a little bit of the room that's split here. That's fine. That's why we're here, why we're going to talk about it. But here's my probably first bullet point on this whole conversation. If Nick Saban were going to be hurt by NIL, if NIL was going to make recruiting harder for Nick Saban, we would have seen some of that already. Nick Saban just signed a number one class in the 2023 cycle, essentially with no coordinators. Like J. Cole went platinum with no features on Forest Hills Drive, Nick Saban just did that in the recruiting world. You say, well, it's going to take some more time. That was one point that Nick Brake was making. I think it's valid. We might see down the road a little bit more of a sample size, but so far he's going to have a top 3 class in 2024 as well. At the time of us recording this, he's got a number 3 class, I believe, in the 2024 On3 industry rankings. So what I'm saying is, if this were going to hurt Nick Saban, we would all sort of be able to see this right now. He would have trouble landing top recruits. And that's not the way that this is working right now for Nick Saban. Nick Saban is still stacking recruiting classes at elite levels, and I don't think that's going to change with Alabama as long as Nick Saban is there. Now, the reason why this article was written, to my understanding, the timing of it at least, is Nick Saban has long been, 1, in favor of NIL, 2, been in favor of regulation for NIL, because different states have different rules, and it's just kind of messy when it comes to the recruiting landscape and what's going on with these kids at the high school level. And so he's going to D.C. to meet with lawmakers this week to try and find some regulation within this space, which I think is a good thing. I think most parties across the college football landscape agree that's a good thing. And so I hope we get there, but I'm telling you, NIL is not hurting Nick Saban. More thoughts on that in a second. Make sure to subscribe right here. Make sure you are locked in because we are live tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. We want you here. We want you in the live chat. We'll talk some ball. It'll be a good time. Also, follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter at JDPikel. As I was saying, NIL is going to hurt schools and coaches that are what we would call the have-nots in college football. Nick Saban in Alabama, they are one of the haves in college football. And what I mean by that is they have resources. They have people that care about the program. Nick Saban and Alabama are going to be able to utilize NIL to benefit them. NIL isn't going to hurt Nick Saban. For Nick Saban, NIL isn't an obstacle. It's a tool to improve his roster and improve his overall situation at Alabama. And so to say that somehow he's fighting NIL because it's going to hurt his team long term, my question would be, what is that founded on? Because other schools in the SEC are using NIL to try and compete with the players that he wants? Okay, I'll hear that. But again, we go back to how he's recruited. Number 1 class last year, top 3 class right now. Doesn't look like it's hurting him. Looks like it's a tool. Look like he's doing just fine in the NIL landscape. Here's what I would also say. To say that this is going to hurt Nick Saban and NIL is also making the assumption that these recruits are making their decisions on their colleges solely based on getting a bag. And I think some of that is fair. Like, I will be the first to admit there are definitely some recruits that are saying, yep, NIL is the deal for me. That's where I'm picking a school. For sure, some recruits are going to say that, I believe. But I would also say, we just had a ton of these top recruits come to Nashville for the On3 NIL Elite Series event, and we sat down with close to 30 of the top prospects in the country, and all of them basically sang the same song. And it was, NIL, is it a factor? Sure. But they all understand that the real money that they're going to make when it comes to their time in college is when they make plays on the field. That money up front, yeah, some of them are going to get it, some of them aren't, but what it really comes down to is making plays. That's when the money comes in. Take it a step further, when you get developed at the right school, and then you go to the NFL, and then you get that bag, that's the big money as well. So a lot of these kids, I think, are a lot more savvy than maybe the public is giving credit for. The assumption is they're just going wherever they can get a bag. Maybe some are, but a lot of them, I think, are playing the long game. A lot of them, I think, are thinking about this the right way, especially the ones that came to Nashville and got some phenomenal education in the NIL space. So to assume that these kids are just going for the money, I don't think that's a fair point. I don't think that's actually how it is in the NIL space, based on the guys that we talked to and based on the things that we're hearing across the recruiting landscape. Here's what I would also say. When it comes to this Nick Saban pushing back on the NIL conversation, some people are saying, well, if it's not hurting Nick Saban, then why is he pushing back on NIL? Nick Saban is about two things. Okay? It's about two things. First and foremost, it's about winning ball games. As long as Nick Saban is the head coach at Alabama, they are going to win football games. To what level remains to be seen. He's the greatest of all time for a reason. He's got all the jewelry to show for it. Alabama is going to be Alabama as long as Saban is there. I mean, we're talking about Alabama fading right now. We're talking about them not being Bama, and like the whole conversation is, will they lose 2 games and be a 10-win football team? That's what people are saying Alabama's fallen off by. Okay, so that's kind of reaching in itself. So first, he's about winning. I think that box is checked as long as he's there. Second piece of this is he is about what's best for football. Like we've seen it multiple times. He's spoken out on topics like the transfer portal, which is going to benefit Alabama. Spoken out about NIL, which again is going to benefit Alabama. Nick Saban is, if I'm reading this correctly, speaking out on NIL because it's not best for the game, not best for student athletes with how unregulated it is. NIL wasn't supposed to be a recruiting tool. NIL was put into place in a rather rushed manner because we want to be able to compensate athletes at the collegiate level based on their name, image, and likeness. They're able to get theirs based on the kind of value they've been able to create for themselves. It's not supposed to be a tool where you can just throw a bag at a recruit and try and get them on board. That's not what NIL was made for. And Nick Saban, seeing that, is saying, okay, we got to have some regulation here. He's been pro-NIL from the jump here. He said these athletes should be able to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. But when you put the right thing in the wrong place, that's when a conversation has to be had. And that's why he's going to D.C. Not this whole nonsense that somehow NIL is hurting his game on the recruiting trail and now he can't use his charm and just flash the Bama brand. Like, it's not how it is. And the recruiting rankings reflect that. I think Alabama's roster will reflect that going forward. And I'm excited to see what Alabama is in the future in the NIL world because, again, they're one of the haves when it comes to the college football landscape. NIL is a tool, not an obstacle for Nick Saban. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Excited to hear from y'all. Again, we're live tomorrow morning, so hit the bell on this channel to be notified when we go live. We'll have a live chat session. We'll talk to y'all. We'll get after it and talk some ball. Less than 100 days from the beautiful thing that is week 1 of the college football season. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.